Imagine going from a small town in Pennsylvania into the biggest city in the world. That's right, we're serving up at the breakfast buffet my assistant coach at NYU, Coach Corey Luce. That's right, learn about his journey from his college career transitioning into teaching at Roosevelt Island in New York City, and also balancing life with his family, life as a teacher, and life as an assistant college coach at NYU. And be sure to go to him for certain tips whenever you're visiting Manhattan. I hope you guys enjoy.
Do it! Ray Jazz calls. Major decision, 14-4.
And here we are. We have one of my assistant coaches at New York University, Coach Corey Luce. I call him Luce because that's what Haberli told me, but it's actually Luce. He's not only the assistant coach at NYU, but he also is a teacher in New York City at Roosevelt Island. If you guys don't know Roosevelt Island, it's that small island in between Manhattan and Queens, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I was helping you coach those little guys too. And so how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, should be good. Should be good. So a rough go this year, canceling the national tournament. I couldn't imagine how, the wrestlers were doing. We were all looking forward to seeing how they were going to compete and some of the guys wrap up their season. How was your feeling behind the whole thing, and how was that atmosphere?
I can't. So me and Anthony Totola, we were on our way out there when we heard the news. So we didn't quite make it out there. Anthony got to the airport. I was on my way into the car service when Bruce called me up and said, "Hey, listen, it's canceled." So my first thought was, okay, well, there's a lot of buildup leading up to this. So I wasn't 100% taken back from the decision. But it was still a head scratcher, realizing that all of these guys were already at this tournament. Everybody was there that needed to be there in order for this tournament to take place. But looking back, I'm assuming that they did the right thing. Safety was the number one priority, but it's absolutely gut wrenching and heartbreaking to see four guys who, well, particularly three seniors who wanted a crack at a national title. So fortunately Zuckerman's back for 2 more years, but guys like Drill, LaCourte, and Lyons, hey, their ultimate goal was to win a national title. I think the NCAA did do the right thing by awarding them an All-American status, but if you talk to those guys, it's definitely obviously not the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, those three guys, the court, Drill and Lions, they were part of my squad. I felt
Yeah.
like I felt like the big brother in the room, getting them ready for battle. And I remember texting Jack. I actually Venmoed him. I Venmoed him some money. Go and celebrate your career after. But what I told him, what I told all of them, it was like, be proud of your career. You went through something not everyone could say they've been through. So it's
Right.
great they rewarded them that. But now for them, it's real life. And what were some of the words you gave them?
I texted all of them immediately and just said, "Hey, listen, we're proud of you guys." It was immediately after we heard, and if I'm in their shoes, I'm just thinking at that time words can probably mean nothing. They were crushed. The way the NCAA did it, I don't agree with it. Announcing it, while these guys were warming up and everything. I think it could have been done a little bit better. But hey, that was the decision. I texted each one of them and said, "Hey, proud of you guys. You guys had one hell of a year." Hey, the thing is NYU prepares them for bigger and better things. These guys are going to be going out in the job world and crushing it. So, a chapter ends, but another chapter begins.
Yeah, for sure. you know, getting into a school like that, the opportunities it brings, I would have been stupid not to choose NYU. So you've been coaching since 2006, right? So was
Yeah,
this
well,
probably one of
I've been coaching since 2000. I was 5 years with Bob Gadenzi at Hunter until then I came over in 2006 with Bruce.
So was this one of the most difficult situations as a coach you've ever been
Yeah,
since then?
100%, 100%. This is the first time this something that ever happened like this, and I mean, you're not prepared for it. You're never prepared for something like this, and yeah, it was just something that was, leading up to it. I can see, okay, yeah, wow, all these other events were, shutting down and getting canceled, and we were hoping, hey, these guys are there. So we were optimistic at that point because everybody was on site. But yeah. I mean, you can't be prepared for something like this, and it was tough. It was a tough pill to swallow.
And you being a PA guy, right? So you're a Pennsylvania wrestler. You take that with pride. There was a little debate every time I would go to practice. The Jersey Pride.
Right.
You wrestled for Kerry Colette. If you guys don't know, pretty high level wrestler.
I didn't
multiple
wrestle for him. He was one of my teammates.
One of your teammates,
Yeah.
one of your teammates at Lockhaven.
Right.
And I always love that story when you said he would play the same song over and over and over again in the Bittersweet Symphony.
Yeah. That's when he signed the Nike contract, and I think that was my sophomore year, and that song he played it over and over and over. It's pretty funny.
I remember, my big goal was, of course, being a national champ and getting to national finals. And I always thought, when I was going to get to national finals, I was going to play Bittersweet Symphony, and I was gonna okay.
I mean, it's a great song. I'll never forget those practices. I think we traveled to Oregon. This is when the weight classes, the year before the weight classes changed, and from 118 to 125. And after we got back from Oregon in January, that's when he signed that contract with Nike. And I just remember that song because it was part of his that Nike advertisement. The song was part of it. So he played it. Nobody said anything about it.
No one wanted to say anything to
we
him.
just let it play.
How was he in the room?
I mean, yeah, I'm obviously we're in awe of him because I mean, just his history in Pennsylvania, and I grew up watching him. And when I came to Lock Haven as a freshman, that's when he was transferring in from Penn State. And our team at that point was phenomenal. I think we had 4 or 5 All-Americans the year after, and our team was just tough. I think we placed 5th in the country. In a small school like Lock Haven, that's pretty solid. And since then, they had a slow start the rest of those years, but now they picked it up and they're a force again. But yeah, I mean, it was great to be in that kind of room. That room was just one of the best rooms that I could ever be in.
Yeah, I could imagine. And then now, yeah, they're doing big things now. They're led by, Scott Moore. I went there. I went there, trained a couple times. My buddies went there, and just the way he runs his program and everything, it was great. He got that PA mentality that you always talk about. Yeah. So then from there, right, you went to Wilkes, right?
Yeah, once the weight classes changed, when it went from 118 to 125, I didn't see myself as a Division I athlete anymore. I was coming off my second ACL, torn ACL. I tore it my beginning of my redshirt junior year. So I had 2 years of eligibility left, and I made a harsh decision. I went back home to Wilkes University. I could have probably went to Kings and had because Wilkes was in the transition. They were going from Division I to Division III, so they didn't have postseason. They just had a regular schedule. So I wasn't taking those things in account, but I transferred to Wilkes and I finished out my college career.
Yeah, and you ended up studying education, right?
Yep. I did a dual degree in psychology and education, and then I packed up and I came to New York
Ye-
City.
Yeah, how was that? A PA boy going into New York City. How was that transition?
I think that's the reason why I did it. I didn't think much of it. I know a lot of people from my area, they don't go to big cities, especially New York. And I think I might have been to New York before I came here, maybe one or two times, and that was during my fifth and sixth grade trips. So I didn't know much about it. I just figured, hey, I'm young. I'm going to go out there, be a teacher, and look for a coaching job. So that's what happened.
So when did you start teaching at Roosevelt Island? How was that, getting a job in education in New York City?
Yeah, I mean, well, it wasn't that difficult because during the time I had a degree already, and that was more than what a lot of people had in New York City during that time in 2000. And I mean, initially, what got me out here was the opportunity to get my master's at Columbia. I forget who the coach at the time was. I don't think it was Buckley at the time, but there was talks that I was just going to be a graduate assistant, and that's what got me initially to New York City. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to go to school anymore. I just would rather get right into coaching and teaching. So I ended up getting a job right away teaching in Chinatown, which was my first job in Chinatown, and then coaching. Funny story is I sent Bruce an email probably a month before I came out to New York City saying, hey, listen, I went to school here and I'd be interested in coaching at NYU. He never got back to me. He never emailed me back or anything. And Bob Gadenzi said, hey, I would love to have you on staff, come in, interview for the position. So I came in and interviewed for the position at Hunter. So I ended up teaching at Hunter College coaching at Hunter College and teaching in Chinatown. And, that was just a great experience. And funny thing is Bob coached Bruce when he was at Hunter. So I met Bruce through Bob officially because Hunter would always, we would always get rides with NYU to Ithaca and other events because Hunter didn't have much of a budget. So NYU, because Bruce was so close with Bob, would give us rides. So that's where my relationship with Bruce came into fact. And the funny thing is I never mentioned anything to him until he hired me in 2006. But then after knowing him and getting to know him, I didn't take any offense to it because he doesn't return calls or emails to anybody.
Yep. It might be 2 days after. I know I sent him I sent him a message 4 days ago, and he got back to me today. And I'm like, what? Come on.
That's Bruce.
Yeah. So how'd you make that transition to Roosevelt Island? To me, it was such a fascinating island. Like, it was just one street on there.
Yeah, I honestly, I got lucky. When I went and taught I interviewed for a phys ed position in Chinatown. And what they ended up hiring me for was special ed. So it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I was just happy at the time to get a job. That's when 9/11 took place. So I remember, we didn't go to school for maybe two months because they used our school as a morgue. They brought bodies there and everything. So we didn't end up going back to that school for 2 months. And I wasn't teaching physical education. I wanted to teach physical education. So I interviewed for a position. I got lucky at Roosevelt Island, and I've been there since 19 years.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on 9/11 in the city. So you're actually in the city for 9/11.
Yeah, I was there. In fact, we were on the 4th floor. So we saw the buildings, smoking and everything. And it was a surreal experience. I was living on the Upper East Side during that time, so I'll never forget the subway system was down. Our phones were all down, so we couldn't communicate with our families. So I had to walk. I lived on 91st Street. I walked maybe over 100 blocks to go back home. So yeah, it was a crazy experience. I'll never forget walking all the way up there and just seeing cars with all this debris and dust driving back out.
How long did that? I mean, I was young when it happened. Like, I was maybe five or 6 years old, and I remember going up in Jersey, the Watchung Hills area, and just seeing,
Right.
my parents, just to think how crazy it is. I know a lot of people compare it to what's happening now and everything. How long was it until, the city was back up in their feet and you were coaching
Uh,
and teaching?
yeah, I mean, it was one of those just like head scratching moments where I guess it has to soak in for a while for you to realize the impact on so many lives and everything. And I just remember spending much time watching it on the news and reliving the moments of it, and it felt like it, forever. That until it finally, like, Rudy Giuliani's face plastered all over. But yeah, we didn't go back to school for a while. Our secretary ended up losing her husband. Kids losing, and trying to their parents. It was just such a terrible event. And but I do remember how New York City really came together, and throughout that difficult time, and how it brought a city with all different backgrounds, all these people together. And so, as bad of an event as it was, I think it made us stronger as a city.
Mhm. Never thought about going back to PA after that, huh? Stayed New
Uh,
York City strong.
you know what? Yeah, it was always in my mind that New York City was going to be short term. I can never see raising a family here because I was raised in Pennsylvania. I was raised a different way. But I said I was going to be leaving after a few years, and then I said the next year, and I met my wife here, and now we have 2 kids, and here we are.
Now you got 2 kids. I remember, I still go to you for New York City advice, even though I lived there for 4 years. So now you're all in New York City. I always go to you. Habs always acts like he doesn't know the good spots, or he knows the spots, but it's always his same old spots.
Right.
You
He
always know the
knows.
hap. Yeah, he just doesn't want to tell me. I always
Yeah,
went to you for the happening spots. I'm like, Coach, where should I bring this girl?
yeah. Bruce knows. Bruce knows. He knows. He actually knows better than I do.
Right. So, coaching the team from 2006, to now, what was the difference between, the eras of coaching? A bunch of coaches say, oh, it's not like it used to be. And even a lot changed from when I was there from 2014 to 2018. I saw, little changes going into effects. How much of a change was it since 2006?
Uh, just remembering back in 2006, it's funny. I still remember the team. I mean, 20. We had that's when Kyle Christensen. We had him at 25. Our team was tough. Gene Kobolinski's last year, your mentor. So
Beautiful wrestling.
yeah, I mean, we had a really tough team, and me and Bruce gelled, really well together. I really enjoyed. I mean, I enjoyed coaching with Bob for those 5 years, and when I transitioned with Bruce, I already have known him for 5 years. I knew, his kids and everything because we were traveling together. So, I can't put a finger on like what the difference between the 2006 team to this team and everything. I do hear coaches saying generations, how they change, and you remember when your grandpop said, well, back in the day we used to walk to school. I would say, when I came to NYU in 2006, and I just remember sitting down with Bruce and we're talking on how we can, make this team really good, and teams, later to come good. And we agreed that we were going to put our best schedule together. We weren't concerned on who we were bringing in at that time, and I didn't start with recruiting with him until the following year because he brought me in August, so recruiting it would pretty much already wrapped up. And I just remember us putting together ridiculous schedules. We were going to the Binghamton Open, the Franklin and Marshall Open. We were wrestling teams like Millersville, which was Division I at the time. We were wrestling Franklin and Marshall. Of course, we were always wrestling the best teams around us, along with, going to the Citrus tournament. It was the Sunshine Open at the time. But our guys were, they were around the best the best competition. And gradually, we just kept on getting better and better. And I believe 2008, I think we ended up taking 12th in the country that year. We had 2 All-Americans, Holt and Takafumi, 3 national qualifiers. So we were rolling, and then Bruce and I were just recruiting together. So and we had a system, and we were just knocking it out.
Right. And even I feel like the school, NYU itself, made big changes since then too. Now it's like a top academic school in not only the country but the world, right? So back then it didn't have that prestige really that it has now, right?
Yeah, I mean we were up there, but now just we're a top dream school year in and year out. We're always in the top 5 dream school for kids, and we're the most overly applied school in the country, getting more applications than any other school. And that's great for our school, but it presents challenges for us as coaches. We really got to go out there and find those kids that first can get into a school like NYU, and then obviously could afford a school like NYU. So, but you know what? Every school has its challenges. Every school has its challenges. So it's just something that we know what we have to work with, and we know which student athletes we need to go after.
Yeah, it probably made recruiting differently and getting more strategic with recruiting.
But you know what? You surround yourself with the right people. You use the right resources. The first person beside Bruce that I went to was Janice Quinn, who I knew, at the time she won a national title for NYU for women's basketball. So, you pick those brains. And, I remember my first couple of years at NYU not being that successful with recruiting because I was overselling it, and I remember her sitting me down and saying, hey, listen, you're overselling something that everybody wants already. Everybody wants to come to NYU. If it was affordable and if anyone can get in, everyone would be here. And she really put things in perspective. So, NYU in itself is an easy sell. You don't have to sell the school. If kids had their way, everyone would be here, in my opinion. So what I had to do was find those kids that can do it on the mat and in the classroom. So, like she said, it's a red carpet education. I'll never forget my conversation with her. She really put things in perspective for me, and I definitely changed my whole entire approach in terms of recruiting.
I like that, the red carpet school. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I remember, when I was getting recruited, called me on Sunday, him watching the Jets. And you didn't think I was gonna. And I remember I told Haberli, and Haberli's like, I'm trying the best I can. I'm like, no, I'm gonna wrestle for you guys. And then I remember I finally got in, and I felt great about it. And when I finally got in, I always felt it was a sense like I have to prove that I deserve to be here. I didn't have the best grades or SAT scores. Well, shush that a little bit. But I really ended up proving myself, and 4-time academic All-American, making sure my grades were good. So, on the mat and in the classroom, and I always prided myself on that. And I always told Bruce, I always showed Bruce my grades.
Well, I mean, and you're a template of what when we talk to, our academic advisor who goes to bat for us for these student athletes, we say, hey, listen, kids like Ray Jazikoff, who didn't necessarily have great test scores coming out of high school, but look what he does for us when he gets here. 4-time academic All-American. So, you help our case in terms of getting those kids who don't necessarily have the best grades,
or the best high school options. Like I was a public school kid, just a regular high school in Jersey, and all these other kids that went to NYU, they were like top-notch prep schools and private schools, and I went in there with a public education from Jersey, and I always had that chip on my shoulder in the classroom and on that mat. Me coming from a public school, not the best school in New Jersey, but we were a great wrestling school, #1 team in the state. And I went to NYU with a pride from that, because all these kids from NYU, majority was prep school kids, private school kids, and I was this public school kid from New Jersey, that blue collar edge. And I went to school with a chip on my shoulder, on the mat and in the classroom. So
Yeah, well, it obviously paid off because you did really well, especially in the classroom. And I think, you also took an intelligent approach to it too, where, hey, listen, you come from a blue collar background, and you're a grinder, and you didn't necessarily, if you didn't know the answers, you seek the answers, and you got the help that you needed, and hey, you earned it. You know what I mean? It's you, when you had a paper due, it was due. You were done with it the day that it was, the first day.
yeah, brought it on the bus so my smart teammates could edit it.
That's right. Hey,
But yeah,
smart.
using the resources.
Use the resources.
Yeah, like you always said, figure it out. I remember, being the captain of the team, and even when I was figure it out, and that's
Figure it out.
I figured it out, and me being a part of the team for so many years, being a captain, and for me, I didn't take going to NYU for granted. And I know a lot of my teammates and a lot of my classmates, they did. They went to these preppy schools. They had, they kind of took that opportunity for granted. And I speak about this a lot as a metaphor, not only for NYU but for everyone in college. I call it letting New York City get in the best of you. And you see that a lot with especially guys from NYU and other colleges, letting the outside influences get the best of you. And, there was ways and times where, as a captain, where I really, I had to deal with it myself and kind of keep it under the rug from you guys. But, how is that an issue? How is that always an issue dealing with it since 2006? These athletes, they're in this big school, New York City, New York City's the campus. So it's kind of hard to get control of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you got to look at it this way. I mean, so the kids that we're recruiting already, they've already had their established work ethic in the classroom, or they wouldn't be able to get into a school like NYU. So the work ethic is already there. And now you're bringing them to New York City, where they're going to be on their own. You want them to enjoy everything there is about New York City, and as a student athlete. But you also, selfishly want them to be that two-part person where they're a student and an athlete, but these kids that we're recruiting, they're majority of them are mature beyond their years, we're recruiting kids that are able to handle a situation where they're coming into the city and they're not wide-eyed. And because they're going to be exposed to a lot of things, obviously. So, maturity and the recruiting process, that all plays a huge factor.
Yeah, for sure. And, you being my coach and everything, I felt like you were the perfect guy to go to about that. You just knew so much about the city. Sometimes going to Bruce about that, he wouldn't give you the best answer for it. So I feel like it was talking to mom and dad. All right, Bruce doesn't know the answer. I'll talk to Corey.
Well, it's just a generation gap, And when I got to the city too, when I got here, I was 22, 23 years old, and I was at Hunter College, and Bob, was my mentor, and I spoke to Bob, and obviously I was in a situation where I was young in New York City, and I enjoyed the city. It was great. Bob was somebody who, the generation gap was there, but I always asked him and took advice from Bob, and he was somebody that I learned so much from at coaching, the way he handled his student athletes. And we obviously had different athletes at Hunter College. We had a lot of kids from the PSAL and the city and everything, and all blue collar kids. And so I was able to see the way he deals with his student athletes from case to case basis. I learned so much from him. He was all the guys. I will say this, and it's the same thing with Bruce. Is when all the kids graduated from Hunter, they absolutely loved Bob Gadenzi. They loved him, and, to this day, I'm in touch with a lot of these guys, and, they're always asking about Bob and everything. It's something where, hey, that's one of the reasons why you go into coaching.
Yeah, and you said that, case to case basis, and that's something, a lot of coaches do, a lot of top legendary coaches, treating your athletes on a case to case basis, because everyone's different. Everyone learns differently. Everyone wrestles differently. And I remember the best advice you gave me, because you knew me so well. I think it was maybe my sophomore year. I lost to someone that I shouldn't have lost to. It was crappy. And then you said, "Hey, you're not going on the mat for a week. You're kicked out of the room." You said, "Go and be a college kid. Go and enjoy life." I'm not saying, whatever, but you said, "Go enjoy being a college kid. You're putting too much pressure on yourself." And at the end of it was the best thing for me. I don't think I lost until the national tournament after that. Yeah, I think it was my sophomore year. And I ended up teching the kid that I lost to.
There you go. And I do remember that. And you know what, though? The thing is, hey, we all want to have Ray Jazakovs in the wrestling room. I look at our team now and everything. And if I were to say that, and I can go through 2006 all the way till now, and I say the best quality in someone who's competing is somebody who just has to compete, wants to compete regardless of all the circumstances. And I think of kids like Sean Lyons, I think of you, I think of an Evan Drill, Nathan Pike, Brandon Jones. Those guys you would have to convince to get them off the mat. As I was having that conversation with you, I definitely remember, hey, you're going to hit a wall, especially for someone who, and at the time, I think you were a little bit overtraining and overthinking a lot of things. And, you weren't the first case, and the reason why I was able to handle a situation like that is because I saw it in the past. But, hey, we love those guys. We love those guys that we have to pull off the mat because they want to compete, because there's not a lot of those guys anymore out there. There's guys that are okay with taking weekends off. There's guys who are okay with missing competition. For guys like you and the other guys that I mentioned, we had to convince them. We had to say, hey, listen, you have to do this. You're going to have to do this. And still they didn't want to listen.
Yeah, taking the day off, it was never an option for me. It was never. And guys hated drilling with me because, if I wasn't feeling it that day, my partner was going to feel it. And that's just coming from a room like South Plainfield where every day was a grind and everything.
Yeah.
And coming from, not take anything for granted. Like I was there, I was going to get the most out of that practice time. I was not letting that 2 hours go to waste. I'm going in there and getting better. And, what I hated was guys that were going through the motions, coming from a program where everyone had to perform at least practice at a high level. Going into the college room, there's some guys that, want it, and then some guys that are just there. Yeah. And I always wanted to perform at that high level in practice because, you got to prepare for the hard battles.
Yeah. And as a coach, I mean, hey, listen, I think you deal with it differently. I mean, I'll never forget when I was that young 22-year-old kid at Hunter, and I probably didn't handle situations like that with these kind of guys who are just going through the motions. And I'll never forget, Bob pulling me aside, and he does it in such a gentle way, where he doesn't want to offend anyone. And he's like, hey, listen, you can't just keep kicking guys out of the room. Or you're going to have to start recruiting for me. And I wasn't recruiting at the time for Bob, and I was kicking guys out of the room, and these guys weren't coming back to our team. So our team might have went, my first year with Bob, we might have had maybe 27, 28 kids on the team. And after I started throwing guys out of the room and they took offense to it, they didn't come back. And Bob was like, Corey, you're going to have to start recruiting for me because, that's just not the way you handle it. And so, you learn through the process, and now you still see it. You still see guys going through the motions, and you're just wondering, hey, what are you here for? You know what I mean? This is too much of a grueling sport to not put yourself out there for a starting position. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing, in order to get better? And if, this is, hey, if you've established friendships and everything, and that was your common goal, hey, then call it quits, and I'm not afraid to have those one-on-one conversations with kids about it. But we want guys, if we're going to have 30 guys on the team, we want 30 guys to be willing to compete hard for a starting spot, because that's the only way we're going to get better.
Yeah, I remember that was the deal. My freshman year going in, coming from a high school like that in South Plainfield, I felt like I was ready, and everyone was in my ear. Oh, college wrestling is another animal. I remember the first day I stepped on the campus, I wanted to wrestle. I was on the wrestling mat. I talked to other freshmen. I met Joe Musher, the NYU strength and conditioning coach. He loved me right out the bat because he knew Zach. He gave me a job at the VPC right away. And I remember Jones just kind of took me under his wing because he saw I wanted it, man.
Yeah.
And I was working hard in the preseason and everything, even though they say, oh, it's a long season. Jones kind of took me under that wing, and I was ready to battle, man. And after that freshman year, I ended up starting end of the season at 174, wrestling up 2-3 weight classes because I was hungry. And I remember going into my sophomore year, I was finally going to be at a weight where I felt comfortable out of every year wrestling. Yeah. And I remember I came into that preseason on fire. Like Zach Evanesh used to always say, be pissed off for greatness. I was pissed off so much for greatness that, it took you to talk to me. I was kind of stepping over the toes of guys that, were the captains that year. I don't want to mention any names, but I feel like I pissed a lot of them off. And then to me, I felt that was an insult. How are you going to be mad at someone working harder than you? And it took you to talk to me and for me to understand, hey, these guys kind of paid their dues, kind of like work hard, but like work hard in silence. And I felt like I didn't really agree with that because, I wanted the best not only for myself, but for the team. If I was working hard, and some guys it rubbed off to. And, I remember you just helped me with that difficult situation. You helped me in the perspective.
Yeah, well, and first and foremost, Brandon Jones is probably one of the best guys that can take you under his wing. I mean, he is such a grinder and such a hard worker, and somebody that you just want to emulate, especially as an incoming freshman. Jesus, but I mean, a good example is that you found, hey, you weren't a 74-pounder. I believe you wrestled off for 149 in the beginning of the season, and I mean, that's a testament of how good our team really was during that time. And you had it in your head that you wanted to start. And 174, was open for you to start. And you still placed in the region, which, again, is a testament of how hard you work. But that's the type of team that we need. We need guys to say, okay, I can't beat this guy here. And, even as a freshman, but I have to start. So I got to figure out a way to do it. And you need 30 guys to do it because we keep telling these guys all the time, NYU, we have very, very little room to have any errors because we're a school that, number one, we understand, what it takes to be on the top because, we've placed in, we've been a top 20 team in the past 5-6 years now. And, but we need 10 guys. We need 10 guys to do it. We need 7 or 8 guys to go to the national tournament in order to bring home a trophy. Are we there yet? No, we're not there. We've kind of skirted around it, where we've brought 4 guys to the national tournament, but we need 30 guys to try to find ways to win, and to make each other better in the room. So
yeah, that's why I think our freshman year, my freshman year, I think that team was so just powerful because we were all passionate. We all wanted to be there. We were all working hard. I would take those guys in the battle any day.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's when that culture started. That's when we started to have more alumni coming and talking more about adversity and everything. They ended up closing Kohl's. That ended my sophomore year, closing Kohl's. We had a great room right by the VPC, and then basically going from there into this tiny room at the Palladium. And for a lot of people that bothered them. For me, it was like, all right, I'm gonna make the most of it. And how was dealing with that, making that, because Kohl's is not going to be done until maybe like still 2-3 years from now. How was that convincing recruits? And just, for me, it wasn't a big deal, but I'm sure to a lot of my teammates it was.
Yeah, I think, and I remember seeing your podcast with your buddy Ashnell and, kind of something similar where, he probably had a lot of opportunities, goes to a Big Ten school in the beginning to like Penn State or Iowa, where their facilities are unmatched. but he decided to stay at home and represent New Jersey. And given the situation, does the room define your success? It doesn't. I think what defines your success is to come in every day with a purpose. And we go back to it all the time. We tell these guys, don't just check in and check out. Don't make it just part of your day where you're going to class and now this is part of your day because it's practice for this 2-hour slot. No, you need to have a purpose in the room every day when you come in. So when we did do the transition, of course you're going to have kids, the locker room talk and everything where, they're upset about it. But remember what this sport is. This sport, this is a blue collar sport, and you're in the trenches, so regardless, we downsized a little bit in our room, but the amount of resources these guys have, there's not a lot of programs that have a full-time weight training staff, a full-time nutritionist, a full-time sports psychologist, a trainer who comes and travels with us all the time. These guys, they're spoiled, but you don't know because that's the only thing you've had, and you're not aware of the other programs and especially Division III on their budget, issues and stuff like that. So yeah, what was it? It was tough for kids that, had that room that we were in for a few years and then to transition to that. It was tough, but can you imagine in the next couple of years what we're going to have? I mean, it's going to be ridiculous. It might be the best Division III facility in the country.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that, knowing that, our program, made that. And I'm holding John Sexton to it because he said that the guys that didn't have, got it ripped from them, they'll have free memberships. If that happens, I don't know. Who knows?
Good.
But, talking about a little bit of the culture, me being an alumni now, looking back at the program and just taking pride of what I did and how I helped the program. I'm sure you look at it too, like all these guys that passed through since 2006 and everything. How is the culture now, and how do you feel? What is the NYU culture now?
Yeah, I think expectations are obviously higher. We go into every season, and again, we're not naive to think that we need to get better, and the way we get better is we get the right kids into the program. That in itself is a battle, and Bruce and I are on the front line, going as many places as we can to get the right kids into this program. But expectations are high every year. We want to bring, we've been stuck on that number 4 for the past 5 years, except the year before we ended up only bringing 2. We had a tough year. That's when Lions got hurt and everything, and we had some injuries. But I think past 6 years, we brought 4 guys to the national tournament. And that was great. The first couple times that it happened, it was great. But your expectations change, and now we want to bring 6 or 7 guys to the national tournament so we can challenge for a trophy. And your culture changed, your expectations change, and you want guys to give you more than they've been giving you. You want every single kid that comes into your program to, regardless if they're the 3rd string 141 pounder. You want them to give you that effort. You want them to care about the program, and also get it done in the classroom. So, we tell these guys, expectations are high. We placed 8th in the country for the first time at the duels. That was a huge stride for our program. We're able to produce that type of result. Is that where we want to bottom out? No. We want to place a lot higher next time.
Yeah, and that's the more emphasis that every program needs, is that team. And me as a coach with me coaching my middle school team, I always pride team. It's all about team. Yeah, you could say it's an individual sport till you're blue in the face. But if it is, how are you going to get yourself better without a teammate? You can't wrestle yourself in the mirror and get better.
That's right.
You need that teammate. You need a full team. Why? You need a team effort because you guys are all battling for the same goal, right? Team points mean a lot when you're trying to be the best as a team, right? And I feel like there's too many individuals now that I see is there's too many individuals, especially a lot of people going to private schools and high school and everything. There's no more sense of team pride. And I feel like when I was at NYU, I tried to bring that back, try to make it a team culture, because I feel like, look at Penn State, look at the top teams, they always talk about their team. They don't talk about certain individuals. And I feel like you guys are trying to make it like that, now, and just harping on that a lot more.
Yeah, I think, aside from there's a lot of things that go into a successful program. Number one, you align yourself with the best schedule, right? You put yourself in the battle with the best teams in the country. You develop good rivalries, which we have. We have good rivalries that, we can bring and get a good crowd to watch. And then again, we go back to once you have the right team and it's molding them, and there's characteristics that you look for kids. You want them to love the sport of wrestling. You have to love the sport of wrestling in Division III setting, where it's such a grind, day in and day out. It's such a long season, and you have to first love the sport, and you also have to have a level of selfishness. Even going into practice and everything, you have to want to find the right partner. It's a head scratcher when I see kids, trying to find the easiest partners. And then there's a flip side where you just see kids that have to find the best partners, and sometimes they find each other. But I think good habits, good, positive competition, that starts in the room. In order for them to be successful outside the room, they have to have those good habits in the room.
Yeah, talking about partners, that's why Gene hated going with me. I always try to pick Gene, or that's why Manny, every time I'd be like, Manny, you're going with me, he would cry all the time when I would go with Manny. But, with you coaching and then now having two kids, how is that a difference in not only coaching, but in your life and everything? How did that go into effect?
I think the good thing is that I can reflect on this was that when I joined Bruce in 2006, he was going through the same thing. He had two boys. And I just remember Roman being a little guy coming into practice, him and Trevor coming into practice, and pitching the ball to Roman, playing baseball with them in the room. And I saw how Bruce juggled those things. It's 100% not easy, and number one, you got to have a supportive wife because you're leaving her at home majority of the time with your kids. So it's not easy, but my wife was supportive, is very supportive. I know Michelle was very supportive of Bruce during the time, and I think recruiting takes a toll. You're traveling a lot. You're obviously missing a lot of things. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's something.
And you're working a full-time job. You're teaching at school. How do you balance that? Just teaching and then coming to NYU? Because you still got to commute from Roosevelt Island to NYU and everything.
Well, I think the good thing is that I have an amazing principal who's very supportive, and she knows how important wrestling is to me. And so as soon as school's over, I get down to NYU, and that's where the coaching begins. I get home around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and it's a long day. So, but it's something I look forward to, the wrestling aspect of my day. It gets me through everything else. And I love teaching, though. I love teaching physical education. It's great. And I love the kids in New York City, at Roosevelt Island, so honestly, I couldn't find a better job if I tried. It's something that I enjoy doing. So, and when you enjoy doing it, it doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah, and what often gets overlooked, for you, and you're also a big part of, you're a big part of Beat the Streets. You started the Roosevelt Island program, and not only were you, coaching at NYU, but you were coaching Roosevelt Island for wrestling, Beat the Streets, starting the program there.
Yeah.
That often gets overlooked. Beat the Streets, they do big things, and really helps the kids in the city just find wrestling.
Yeah, it's great. We were the second program to get started behind Baruch, and we ended up winning. We won 3 titles, and during that time I brought all the Hunter College wrestlers over with me during those times. Evan Velez and Brian Schur, Richie Perkins, and all those guys. I had like 5. Billy Kelvacka. I had like 5 or 6 Hunter College kids helping me coach. And our team at Roosevelt Island was probably like 25 to 30 kids. It was crazy. We had such a huge squad. The difference is that it was after the college season. So once the college season ended in March, Beat the Streets picked up in April. So we went from April, May, and June. It was a 3-month season. And June was when we had the banquet. And yeah, that it was a lot of fun. In fact, John-Luc DiStefano, who was on our team for the past couple of years, we wrestled against him. I had this little kid named Steven Sanchez that wrestled against John-Luc, and they had epic battles throughout those years. And so it's funny that all these years later, I ended up coaching John-Luc.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, I ended up coaching for you guys, my junior, sophomore, junior year, because it was before the season. I always loved doing that. We had it was great to take that trip to Roosevelt Island, get a nice different view of the city and everything. Yeah. And like you said, the kids were awesome. You have to do it. You have to love wrestling to give back like that. And
yeah. I mean, you look at a kid, right? I mean, the purest part of coaching is you're taking a kid who has zero knowledge of the sport, right? And if you get them to a level of success, that's all on you. That's what you did as a coach. This kid had no prior knowledge before coming into this program until you coached them. And, so you see that a lot in the elementary where, you're the first one to have an impact on a kid. And ultimately, you're the one who decides on whether or not this kid is going to continue to wrestle or not.
Right. Yeah, even with me, coaching middle school kids, now and even back then, it was great. Everything. All these kids hit me up, Coach. What do I do about this? What should I do about that? And when they listen to you and you see the results, how rewarding is that?
It's the best, right? It's the greatest feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes they're easier to coach than some of those college kids, huh?
Well, some of these kids, some of these city kids, they'll run through a wall for you. You know what I mean? And they'll do whatever you ask them to do. So, it's a great atmosphere. It's different. It's a great transition from going to coaching a middle school kid, an elementary kid, and then to a college kid. So a different transition. Right.
So what? Yeah, I'll go into this. I ask everyone this question. Your adversity moment. What is some adversity you went through in your life that is a part of you, a part of your story now?
Adversity. I would have to always go back to. I mean, you always go back to wrestling, right? I mean, I think wrestling, in general, because it's been such a huge part of your life. You look at the disappointments sometimes more than the achievements. And, you have those dark moments. I can go back and think of, the weight cutting to make 118 was just probably one of the most brutal things that I've ever gone through. Some horror stories, that back then we were allowed to do everything, right? And we weighed in the night before, so you can weight cut as hard as you want. But and then you go, and then those ACL tears and those injuries and everything. I think those things build you up. And to tell you the truth, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, if the reasons why, I'm glad I had those disappointments, because I think that's what pushed me into coaching. Probably would not have gone into coaching if you didn't have all those setbacks and adversities, because I think you're more prepared and you just don't want your kids, that you coach to go through those type of things.
Yeah, some of the best coaches, actually sometimes weren't the best wrestlers, achievement wise, sometimes they're better because they went through all those adversity moments, and they tell their athletes and their wrestlers what to not do. I tell all my athletes now how to not cut weight. I tell them, don't cut weight at all. You're too young, because I was cutting so much weight in high school. And now with some of the college kids I talk to, or the high school kids going into college, it's completely different, what I tell them just from my stories and everything. So now, right, with this whole pandemic coming, or here, the pandemic, COVID-19, how is NYU affected by it? I'm sure you're affected by it, recruiting and everything. And I'm sure you don't even really, it's hard to build a plan with something that's unknown right now, right?
Yeah, there is no plan. You don't have any answers. Until you're told by administration, you just wait and sit back and just wait, and we're recruiting. We're doing some, kids are doing visual tours, contacts. I'm doing Zoom with some of these recruits, and, but we're somebody that we look at the November 1st deadline for early decision, and look at a lot of things that are affected. ACTs, SATs, April, May, June, all of those they're all canceled. So I don't know what NYU is going to do. I don't know what it's going to be like in the fall. I know that they're talking about it, and they're going to formulate a plan, and of course, it would be devastating, for our season to be canceled. But it's also whatever's in the best interest of our student athletes. That comes first. Safety comes first. But we're already being affected. We're already having kids that are looking to defer a year of eligibility, and defer a year of school. They got in, they're going to defer, maybe come back, and then come back the following year. So, and some hammers that we recruited, that are looking to go that route, and so we'll have to see. There's a lot to discuss, but we don't have any answers right now.
Right, and what's kind of soothing is not soothing, but the silver lining is every team's going through this right now, right? It's not even like knows what NYU is even going to do, the school, not even the team, but everyone's going through it, so I guess you got to take it step by step. But pandemic, not counting the pandemic, it's making it a non-factor. For me as a kid, at a high school, what made me choose NYU was, the coaching staff was Bruce and you. And, what was different between you and the other coaches was not only did you care about me, but you cared about where I came from, my parents, how my family is and everything. About everything around. It wasn't stick more to Bruce and Cancellation a lot more, because he would call me every Sunday just to call me, see how I was doing. Didn't even talk about wrestling most of the time. Just pandemic not being a factor, right? What for you have any advice you give someone that is looking to wrestle for NYU or trying to get recruited by you guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're not that difficult to find, and during this time, we don't have the flexibility of going out to Fargo. Obviously, I was on my way. I was going to go out to the Disney duels, and that got canceled. Virginia Beach got canceled. So, yeah, a lot of these events that we planned on going to, we're not going to be going to. So it changes it. And for us, I feel like it hurts us a little bit more because we're such a needle in a haystack institution where it's so difficult to find the exact student athletes that we need. And schools like Williams, Chicago, Johns Hopkins, they're all in the same boat. I do have a lot of emails coming through kids that are saying, hey, coach, listen, I'm interested in NYU, and, they're reaching out to us. But obviously, social media, they can find us on all of the outlets of social media. But our emails and all of our information is on the Go NYU Athletics website. So if they are interested, obviously they fill out a questionnaire, and we can begin the recruiting process by just making phone calls back.
Right. Yeah. And I tell a lot of high school kids and a lot of kids getting recruited, send those emails to the coaches, fill out those recruiting forms. Yeah. Even if they're not looking at you, some coaches are so busy recruiting and, living their daily lives, working your full-time job, taking care of your kids. Coaches are every wrestler. So I tell them, send that coach an email, get in their vision. What's the worst they're going to say? No. Right.
Yeah. Just CC me when you email Bruce, because he's still not good with getting back on emails.
Yeah, he's about 5 years behind on the technology.
It's a true story.
I'll read some NYU questions, right? And so us alumni and wrestlers now can have a little. You ready? Best NYU manager of all time.
I mean the people spoken, right? I mean they said Mikey Cutz was the best manager. So I mean, I'm just gonna have to go with the people. But we were in the past very fortunate to have some great managers. I think of Jackie and Peter and Gabby, and we had some really great managers. So they had to be pretty great to deal with us every day.
Yeah, I think Mikey Cutz takes the cake, man. He was like Bruce Haberli's right-hand man. It was like if Bruce wasn't answering you, you would have to call Mikey Cutz, and he'd be like, "Hold on, he's right here."
Yeah,
Give the phone right to Bruce. Or
that's a,
Bruce would be like, if Bruce didn't want to talk to you, he would just give the phone to Mikey, and Mikey always had the answers.
right.
Mikey Cutz, man.
Yeah, I miss that kid already. I mean, we had a great 4 years with him. You know, he was definitely as close as you can be to being part of our team without wrestling. So he was great to travel with, and you know, he obviously also knew his stuff too. Former wrestler too. Former wrestler.
He was. We were hoping he was gonna make that comeback, but then somehow he crossed the street trying to save a cat and he broke his foot, and he was in a boot somehow. But he can't. That kid, man, he's awesome, and I still go to him for a couple advice with different things, different tech stuff that he's good with. But we chat it up sometimes, and that's what's great about the NYU program is you have people that are in so many different fields and careers that you could just reach out to someone or even just a little group and people will get back to you with advice with everything. And I feel like not every school is like that.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're surrounded by a lot of smart kids who, they're all good at something. And that's what's great, and especially with these study halls that we have, these kids lean on each other to get better, and but yeah, Mikey's great, and I still stay in touch with them. I'll reach out to him. I've been in contact with him in the past couple weeks. Just asking him. He knows a lot, especially with recruiting. He knows everyone in New York. So
yeah, he does.
he's one of the first guys I reach out to.
All right, so another question: your best moment coaching at NYU.
Wow, my best moment. I mean, it's hard to put a finger on it. I mean, obviously Nathan Pike, being in his corner and watching him become NYU's first national champ. I mean, that was it was gratifying, especially having him fall short the year before. But as a team, us coming so close, to those regional titles. I mean, we had 3 runner-up finishes, and but I look as a team as a whole, although that one single moment with Pike, yeah, that was great. That's one of those defining coaching moments. I'll never forget those great teams that we've had, and that we've mentioned before, and that energy in the room and just loving to go to work every day.
The best NYU team that you've ever coached. Which one? I know that was on the poll. That was on the poll of the questions.
That was on the poll, and I'm not going to comment on that.
All right, your favorite story, your favorite NYU wrestling story.
Oh my God.
Something that happened on the road. You can include multiple. I know a lot of people want to hear it.
Yeah, I'm afraid to actually mention a few of those stories, and I know you guys all heard these stories because we talk about them at the alumni match, and mostly they all involve Bruce. So, you know what? Here's a great thing. I won't say a particular story, but I will say this: that since coaching now in my 15th year, how many great moments and great stories and when we have our alumni weekend and when we all get together and we talk about those crazy stories and those instances, whether they were in the wrestling room or when we were traveling. I mean, to me, I think that just defines on why we do all of this and how great of it is and how it's like a brotherhood when we all get together and when we talk about it. It's just amazing experiences. But I'll save those stories for when we have alumni weekend.
Smart. So I'll leave you with these 2 questions, right? I always end it with it. Who is Corey Luce, and what do you want to be known for?
Well, I mean, you know what? That's a good question. I think the best thing I want to, you look at coaching, you look at teaching and everything, and those things are all secondary. Obviously, you want to be, when you're married, you want to be the best husband possible, and family's always first. And then when you have kids, you want to be the best father. So I would put those two things above everything. And once you have those things figured out, which you're never going to, because it's always a work in progress, it's really about establishing great relationships. That's really what it all comes down to. Coaching, teaching, being a father, and being a husband. It's all about good relationships and establishing them and continuing to work on them and having great communication. So if I can go with being a great father and a great husband, then that's all I would want to be known for.
Awesome. So, where could they find you at? NYU Wrestling, Instagram, right? Facebook, I'm sure NYU Wrestling page, email, right? They could email you guys, any recruits, anyone?
Yep. www.gonyuathletics.com. That's where our questionnaire is. You can find, I finally did Twitter. So I have my own Twitter account now, but we have NYU Wrestling Twitter, NYU Instagram, which is our main account, main social media account. We're killing it, on the social media aspect with Instagram. And then obviously Facebook, we have that. So yeah, we're easy to find, and it's easy to start the recruiting process with us.
Yeah, now all we have to do is get Bruce on this, have him download Skype or something. We got to figure it out. We got to get him on there.
Yeah, that's not happening. Michelle's going to have to help him with that one.
Yeah, or Trevor or Roman or something.
That's right.
But, thank you, Coach. I appreciate your time, and definitely appreciate all your advice over the years and everything. You're one of those people I could always go to for anything, coaching advice, city advice, life advice, and I want to thank you. And looking back about my career at NYU, I'm truly proud that I was able to wrestle for you guys and graduate for you guys. And the best moment that for me with NYU, and it's a little personal, but I have to mention it because it was such a powerful moment. And that was when, my sister passed away, and you guys sent in, I think it was 2 or 3 vans to my sister's wake. And that meant a lot to me because I gave a lot to the program. Even it was my freshman, sophomore year, happened going into my junior year of college. It was that summer going into it. And just to have 2 or 3 van full of teammates, and even some of the alumni, and even some of the guys that weren't even wrestlers, to bring them into that during the summer while a lot of people were working, that was, that's what proud to be part of the team and part of the culture of the team. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, that was obviously a no-brainer. We're a brotherhood, and outside the wrestling room and practice and everything, and we stick together. So of course we knew that was going to be a difficult time in your life, but hey, we're always here to support you, throughout the rest of your life too. So but thanks for having me. It's always good to talk to you, and we stay in contact regardless, almost every day anyway.
Yeah, whether it's DMing or just replying on.
That's right.